Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the 2 episode premiere of Hawkeye on Disney Plus. Episode 1 being Never Meet Your Heroes, and Episode 2 being Hide and Seek. But for these purposes, I am doing both of them together here because they actually work very well together. And I really enjoyed this. I think this is offering a pretty strong start to Hawkeye. If it is able to keep up the quality that they've shown here in these 2 episodes, this could probably be my favorite one out of the ones put out so far. And it's mainly because it does kind of like the Die Hard Christmas movie kind of thing, where it's set. The main action is set in like 2025 because this is set like 2 years after Endgame, around Christmas time, and Hawkeye's got to deal with all this stuff and make sure that he's able to have a good Christmas with his family. And you don't really see that often enough. I mean, you get Die Hard doing it. Iron Man 3 is technically an actiony Christmas movie because it's set around Christmas, but it's kind of cool to see this work out. And I'm just really glad that they're able to do this well with the character development and do some pretty good action stuff with this. So let's get into it. So the first episode details and gets us a good amount of backstory on Kate Bishop while also introducing us back into Hawkeye in this specific period of time. And at first we start in 2012 and we see that Kate is with her parents and she's pretty much overhearing them arguing about finances, about having to sell the house, and the father being like, no, I'll be able to figure this kind of out because there hasn't been a lot of movement on it and everything going on. And they're like, all right, cool, we'll see. Well, she sends, Eleanor, the mother, sends the father to kind of deal with Kate, and he goes in, pretty much tries to assuage her fears and everything because she doesn't want to move. And he's like, I'm going to do everything I can. I'll protect you. We'll be okay. Go have lunch with your mom, and I'll be in my office. Well, they then have lunch. We see this kind of cool little scene where the mom is able to pretty much flick a carrot into her mouth, and that just kind of shows that she's got some like physical skills. I don't know if that'll like pop up later on, but it was kind of a funny thing and is able to kind of get them bonding a little bit. But then later, a little bit later, we see that the Battle of New York starts to happen and the Chitauri start doing things. And she's freaking out trying to find her parents, can't really find them, and then like a wall blows out and she's looking out, and then like a Chitauri rider is pretty much coming for her, and Hawkeye saves her. And this shows how much that kind of like affects her because this is a pivotal moment. And I'm like, okay, this works out pretty well because normally you have to watch out when you're going pretty much that far back to kind of like retcon certain things, but they're able to do it very well here where it doesn't look weird. You're like, okay, even though this is made much later and introducing a character that we're just getting to know, it makes sense that she's like, wow, this dude saved me and he was able to do this in a badass way and all that kind of stuff. She's not immediately hero worshipping him, but we see it deeply affect her. And of course that's when her mom kind of comes in, gets her out, and then of course we see that her father died and that her mother's trying to reassure her that she will protect her. And that then sets her on her course as we see doing stuff in the opening where they're able to effectively pretty much condense a good chunk of her growing up so that way we can get more up to speed. Now granted, there are trade-offs in how you can do this, but this in my opinion worked very well here where we see her pretty much getting into archery, fencing, martial arts, showing that she has developed a lot of physical skills and trying to be on par with like Hawkeye with what he's done with his agent, like him being an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and what he's done. So it's like, okay, not that she's like at like that agent level at this point, but that she's taking that kind of seriously, and what she's seen him be able to do, she's trying to emulate as well. So it's not, it does have that fan kind of mentality of like, yes, this is like this is my hero. I want to be just like them, without it being kind of like completely clingy. She does have those fangirl moments throughout these 2 episodes, getting into those certain instances, but it's never like over the top. It's like normal kind of reaction to like meeting your heroes. Then we get to present day, which is 2025. I think that Marvel, that's my biggest kind of knock. Like, if you say present day and it's still around the kind of time frame of like, yeah, it's Christmas, it's getting to Christmas time around here, you would think it would be kind of like present day here. Instead, they like, since the MCU's in the future a bit, they should put like MCU present or whatnot to kind of differentiate. But we see that she is in college, and we see a reference to Stain Tower. It's like interesting kind of college with that. But evidently, she has had a bet with like her friends or roommates or whatnot that she couldn't hit the bell in this bell tower. And at first, she's able. They're trying to figure out what actually counts as the bell itself, or the dangly thing inside the bell. So at first, she hits it, and it doesn't ring or anything. So then she's able to like mess with her arrow to be able to hit the rope and make it ding and everything. But this sets off the bell, and it starts like breaking apart, destroying the tower and the clock tower. As the security guard's like, "Hey, yeah, that ain't cool, my bro," and she gets in trouble for it. So she gets back, and we see that she's talking with her mom, and they don't have like a frosty relationship. But it's interesting to see these kind of dynamic changes since we were introduced to them as child and parent, and now it's young adult and parent. And the mom is pretty much had to lay out a lot of money to fix that and try and smooth that over, and that the consequence of that is that she canceled all of Kate's credit cards, and Kate's not. It's really interesting to see how this character, how these characters interact, because Kate has no problem with this whatsoever. She's like, yeah, fucked up, and she accepts it without being bratty or whatnot. Now, her mom is pretty much trying to grill into her that young people think they're invincible and rich people think they're invincible, and that she's both, and that she's not invincible. And I think normally that generalization can hold true, but I don't think that's really true in Kate's case, because she had a close brush with death when she was a child, and I don't think she has the illusion that she's invincible. But seeing them kind of deal with their kind of hang-ups without being like completely combative with each other is an interesting kind of way, because I'm not that well versed with Kate's character, but I like a lot of what I'm seeing throughout these 2 episodes. Well, she's like, one of the ways you can make it up is go get dressed and come with us to this gal. I was like, come with us. And we are introduced to Jack, who is with Eleanor. And of course, we don't know much about him at this point, but she's kind of trying to suss it out. I was like, alright, fine, cool. So now we're going to switch over to Clint. And what he is doing here is having Christmas with his kids. And I really like this because a lot of Clint's motivations in Endgame were tied to when his family was snapped away by Thanos in Infinity War and what that did to him. And I really like that we see the consequences of them coming back. He is here to be with his kids and everything. So that's like he wants to make a really great Christmas for them, and he really shows love and affection towards his kids, and that makes a lot of sense because how much his family means to him and what his life was without them, and to get them back like that, he truly appreciates it. So the first bit we see them in is that they've made a Rogers the Musical, pretty much making fun of like Hamilton, and oh my god, it's like oh god, it's like they actually went out and did it pretty well. Now granted, I am not much into musicals. The main musicals that I was like okay with was when I was a kid, like Disney animated features where I'm like, okay, where there's some musical numbers, but it's not all of a musical. Here we've got Kat going like, I can do this all day, singing about the Hulk and shit. Ant-Man's in there for some reason. And it's funny because we see Clint and we see that he actually has hearing problems and turned off his hearing aid. And like this one person's like looking back at him and like, what the hell's going on here? But like, hey, yeah. He's like, oh yeah, what's up? And then his daughter's like, Dad, did you turn off your hearing aid again? It's like, we start getting that introduced where Hawkeye does have hearing problems in the comics. And it's like, it's kind of cool that they're doing the kind of stuff with that here. And he's like, yeah, it's alright, it's cool, I'm just gonna go to the restroom. He goes. And we get some kind of interesting stuff here. The urinal that he's at has a Thanos was right thing. And you can see that kind of worry attitude that Clint has. It's like, of course there'd be people that would agree with how Thanos was doing stuff in Infinity War and Endgame, but how negatively it affected Clint and everybody else is like, yeah, you can eat me. And then he's at a urinal. Nobody else is around. And this ass, listen, if I saw an Avenger and wanted to try and, get a picture or whatnot, I understand that. I am not going to be the douche canoe that will fucking go into a restroom and then just go right next to him and start pissing me like, hey, can my kids get a picture with you, or can I get a selfie with you or whatnot? He's like, yeah, dude, this is not the time. And I'm just like, yep. He's like, hey, how about now? I was like, sweet Jesus. And it's funny because the way we've seen Clint, he's really not used to that kind of stuff. And because he's normally not one of the bigger kind of Avengers, even though it's like, yeah, Hawkeye does some kick-ass shit. And then, of course, he's, outside and everything. He's like, yeah, we're done with it. We're cool. He's like, all right, cool. What else do you guys want to do? Let's go eat and everything. And then we, of course, see them at a restaurant, eating a lot of good food, pretty much running through what they want to do for Christmas. And the restaurant comps him the meal and everything. And he's like, no, you're good. You're good, Hawkeye. He's like, oh, thank you very much. But he's really into it, and it shows a lot of how much his family means to him without being, overwrought or melodramatic or anything. It's very well done and well handled. So they're pretty much dealing with that and having to, get back to get back to his wife eventually, but they don't do that yet. They're mainly in New York, and they'd have to catch a plane out. And it's about, I think, 6 days initially, so we're getting into our time framing of what's going to be going on here. We shift back over, and Kate is at the gala, and she's not in the dress that her mother wanted her in. She's in this actually really nice suit. And I'm like, good style. If she was in the dress, fine, but we are seeing that she has her own kind of style, and it's kind of crazy because she keeps getting mistaken for somebody who works there. However, that does work in her favor with things that start going on. So we see that her mother is mingling, doing all that kind of stuff, and this Armand dude comes over and is like, yeah, you used to have brunch when you were little and everything. It's like, it was a kind of a shock that they were engaged, and it's like, you're engaged? It's like, didn't know that. It's kind of crazy that you learned it from me. So this dude's being pretty much, he goes to douche level territories, but he's not being douche canoe mega dick shit yet, but he does have that kind of aura of I do what I want. But he's talking about, he's trying to find his grandson, does introduce the grandson. It's Armand the 7th or whatnot. There's a lot of Armands, and of course we learned that this Armand the 3rd, the old dude, is the uncle to Jack. And we learned that he's into a lot of swords and everything. It's I was not that well versed with him, but this is setting him up as swordsman. And it's yes. We'll have to see how that kind of works out. That gets more into it in the 2nd episode. But he's like, oh, sorry for that. Have a good thing. And she, of course, is just all right, I gotta go out and get some air. She does. That's where we're introduced to this dog that has one eye and everything is a good boy. And she's like, oh yeah, how are you doing? And it's he just kind of walks off a little bit, and she goes back in. She hears that her mother and Armand the 3rd are arguing about something, and she's like, that's kind of really weird, huh? And the mother's like, yeah, I'll just meet you back in there. And she decides to follow Armand and goes through all these kind of things, goes through the kitchen, pretty much picks up some stuff and makes her way look like that she's working there, and finds this kind of like deal room. It's like a black market kind of thing underneath the gala where these other rich and powerful people can get all these other kind of things. And we see that they're having their conversations, and it seems like they're trying to do a pincer move. That Eleanor is not doing things that Armand wants, but maybe Jack could potentially apply some other different kind of pressure points. And we also see their dynamic as well, as Kate's kind of sitting back there. This one dude kind of asked her who she is, because he thought he was the only one working there, and gets like his tray and is able to like effectively deflect a lot of stuff. But we see that a lot of auction things are coming up. First it's like a Triceratops thing, and then they have the Ronin sword from the Avengers compound. It's like, shit, people were able to get a lot of crazy shit. That's a big security thing. And of course, Jack, being in swords, is doing all this stuff to get it and kind of bids it up pretty high. And Armand's like, you don't have that money, Jack. It's like, okay, so he's in some money trouble as well. But someone, I think it was Armand that got the final one, because Kate had to like dodge this kind of dude being like, like, you don't work here or whatnot. And she's able to kind of like get around. And then they put up the Ronin suit, and it's like, wait a minute, you do the sword but not the suit together? It's like, what kind of auction are you running here, people? And that was just my thoughts. It's like, why would you... It's a set. Why would you just get one and not the other? But we see that this, what they're called is like a tracksuit mafia, like Russian mafia, blasts in, and they're looking for something specific. Like, they're going through, doing all this stuff. We see that Kate is able to get a hold of the Ronin suit, so that way she can kind of like get around and see kind of what's going on. Jack, of course, gets the blade. That's important. And they are trying to get like this watch, I think, from the Avengers compound. As they're like putting stuff out, we see one of them trying to be a dick to the dogs. Like, screw you. And then we see this action scene as they're pretty much trying to take on Kate dressed as Ronin. And they're like, it's that killer dude. Like, evidently they got history with Ronin. It's like, oh shit. And we learn that Clint, we don't get this full story, but he's talking to his wife. He's like, yeah, I gotta deal with the tracksuit mafia. It's like, oh, those guys. So they're a weird kind of little group, evidently, and I hope we get like a little bit more in depth. I pretty much so, because of how the second episode ends. Well, this works out pretty well, because I really like how these fights are kind of choreographed, because we don't get that Kate is like super awesome at fighting to begin with. She's got skills, but there's difference between fighting crazed armed people in a hostage scenario versus an exhibition. But the thing is, they don't like make it too easy for her or fucking like stomp her into the ground. They do a nice balance of kind of like a John McClane middle ground. John McClane will be able to fight it, but he's gonna get hurt doing it. And Kate's able to do that. She's able to like utilize her martial arts skills pretty effectively to do some things, even making some mistakes of like hanging onto a bar but not being sure if it will like hold her weight. I'm like, yeah, you better make sure about that before she like hits down on the ground. And the fight scenes are pretty clear. Granted, they do shift between a lot of different angles, but it's always kind of clear and flows in a nice progression. You always need that with an action sequence like this. Otherwise, you lose track, you're not quite sure what's going on, and then if you get too far behind, you just start to kind of tune it out. This keeps you in the action and actually keeps you in the point of view with the character as well, even though you're not always necessarily behind the character. But she's able to kind of like get her way out. She is kind of screwed up a little bit, but not by much. And then she, of course, is able to stop the dude from hitting the dog, but the dog's like, people are fucking hitting me, and like bolts and gets into traffic, but she's able to save the dog pretty well before people are like, hey, look, it's Ronin, what the fuck's going on? So, stupidly, she decides to go back to her apartment in the full Ronin gear and pretty much gets the dog there. It's like, alright, stay here, food, and then gives him pizza, and which she's like, alright, cool, and she's like, alright, stay here. So she decides to pretty much go to Armand's house to kind of check what's going on. She's like, alright, yeah, but lo and behold, we see that he's dead with a slice in his midsection. And she's like, what the fuck? This, of course, does more shit, and it doesn't... because people then see her leaving from there. It's like, is Ronan active again? We also see that one of his servants finds Armand's like, oh, shit! Clint, of course, sees this on the news as like, fucking shit. She, of course, is trying to, like, make it back to her apartment, but the Tracksuit Mafia pretty much gets on her, and those guys are nutty. I don't know exactly their character names, but, like, this one dude is trying to be the head guy, and the one dude is, like, kind of like the muscle, and he's like, we're gonna get you. And they pretty much circle her. It's like, shit. She at least begins well enough, but she starts getting kind of, like, overwhelmed before, of course, Clint had to, like, leave his family. He's like, I gotta go handle this. Is able to kind of, like, muck with them, fucking using even, like, a towel at certain points, and it's just like, shit. Clint knows what he's doing. He, of course, is able to chase her down, and he's like, alright, who the hell are you? And, of course, pulls down, he's like, what the hell? But that's where the episode ends, and you're like, cliffhanger, damn you! We then, of course, switch over, and we've got the second one going, and he, of course, is calling her a kid, and he's like, all right, we gotta figure out what's going on here. Let's take me to, like, he's trying to figure out where she's all been, because those guys mean business. The Ronin has a lot of enemies because of what he did in between Infinity War and Endgame, so it wasn't the best kind of deal to kind of do that. So they kind of get back to her department, try to figure out what's going on with the dog. He's like, all right. And he's like, let's see. Yeah, gets her to change because he just wants the suit. He wants to pretty much effectively stop what's going on with this. She, of course, wants him to sign her bow, sees all the kind of things with her trophies and all that. Let's see here. Yeah. Then we start getting into the pretty much next action scene, and he's like, did you... tell me how you, like, got here, because he's trained as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and wouldn't go back to his safe house in such a way that somebody would be able to find him. Kate does not have that training, and so the Tracksuit Mafia come in and pretty much are, like, throwing Molotov cocktails and pretty much burning her apartment down. Thing is, Hawkeye's able to, like, catch one of the Molotovs and throw it back, and that was a pretty funny and great scene, because it's like, shit, I was on fire, but they're able to pretty much get out of that scenario, get the dog out, and Hawkeye's pretty much trying to contain everything as much as possible. She, of course, is, like, starstruck with him, and he's just like, listen, I just want to finish this and make sure you're good. And the thing is, she's not trained in the exact same stuff that he is. So, even though it could look condescending and kind of babying her, he's gone into problem-solving mode. It's really kind of cool because it gets me into his character a little bit better, because he's not trying to be an asshole. And then the thing is, I've gotten into those kind of modes myself, where it's like, okay, you switch to problem-solving mode, and you're not trying to be... you're trying to find out the most effective ways to kind of make sure that everybody comes out alive and unhurt. They go to a place and start getting supplies to, like, clean wounds and stuff like that. She's wondering about, like, hey, what about Stark Towers? Like, Tony sold that years ago. And she's like, that sucks. And they pretty much go to her aunt's house, which she pretty much used a pizza ploy to pretty much get into the place. And, of course, feed more pizza to the dog, who's awesome and a good boy. I'm like, yeah. So Hawkeye is trying to figure out best course of action and what to do with everything here. So they pretty much spend the night there. He tries to pretty much help her clean her wounds, shows her everything and how to do that. He pretty much tries to hide the Ronin suit at one point, pretty much giving an update for his wife, and that he is going to try and do a catch and release thing. Now, granted, that's a little bit later in the episode. But we see that she has to go to work, and of course, Bishop Securities, he kind of follows her, gets... oh, wait, that's right. He does get the suit back, but at the end. But the thing is, the suit was left at the apartment, and he has to go back and get that to kind of figure out everything going on. Sorry about getting a little bit ahead. When you get it kind of binged like this, it kind of flows a little bit. So he goes out to try and get it, pretty much getting hooked up as a firefighter, but sees that it's not in the apartment. Sees this thing about a LARP group for the fire department. It's like, alright, fine, cool. I'll just have to try and figure out what's going on with there. So he's able to look it up and find the whole LARPing thing. He takes Kate to her job to pretty much make sure that she's good and not being tailed, because they know where she lives, so they would probably try and tail her for taking her out. So they got their phone numbers and everything, even though she's like, yeah, I got your phone number now. Yeah, if you annoy me, I'll fucking block you, and goes off. So this is where it kind of diverges. Let's see here. Let's do the Clinton part first. So he gets to the LARP group, and he tried. I could see how people might be annoyed with this section, but I think they handled it very well, because it could have went one of two ways of getting way too deep into the kind of LARPing and being too much of a kind of a side thing that like adds no value, and then the other kind of no value route is just to paint them as a bunch of fucking nerd assholes or whatnot, and just be like, oh, they're playing make believe in a park and whatnot. I'm glad they didn't do that, because Clint's just like, I got a mission. Can I just go talk to this dude who's dressed as a ninja? Because he had scrolled through, and this dumbass, going by the name of Grills, he got the suit, and then he showed himself in the suit on the internet. With the reputation that Ronan has had throughout the years, you'd think you wouldn't do that. But granted, being a fan person of something, I understand geeking out about things. This is not smart. But Hawkeye's like, alright, fine, I'll do it. And he like goes through all the signing stuff, and we see him going through and dodging all this kind of stuff and like fighting and all that, because he's a competent fighter, and he's just going through and doing it, and it's kind of funny and slow-mo, because Jeremy Renner is able to really show his like nonplussed kind of just like, I don't have time for this shit, and I don't really care about this shit face going through it. But then he gets to the dude, he's like, oh shit, you're Hawkeye. He's like, alright, this is gonna go like one of two ways. You just give me the suit, or I fight you, and you give me the suit. He's like, alright, how about this? How about you fight me, I win, and I give you the suit? And he's like, dude, this is like the biggest thing that would probably ever happen to me. Can we do this, please? And he's like, fine, whatever. So they get into like dueling combat. He's like, come on, man, let's just try and make it look good. He's like, fine, whatever, just kill my ass. And then he's able to do it, and he's like, oh yeah, cool. And then he actually comes and he's like, yeah, thank you for doing that. That's probably one of the biggest things that ever happened to me. Thank you very much. And he's very thankful, and he adheres to the deal that they made and everything, and wasn't being an asshole to him. He's like, yeah, sure, we're good. And he's like, alright, thanks, girls. And he walks off. He's like, hey, can you return that? Because I don't want him to charge me. He's like, yeah, sure, yeah, they'll do that. And he's like, alright, cool. It was a really kind of nice kind of thing. It's a weird kind of quest that Hawkeye had to go through to get it, but it was nice. And of course, that's when he kind of pretty much sets the suit aside, talks to his wife, pretty much getting ready to do a catch and release to kind of figure out what to do with the Tracksuit Mafia. While that's going on, we see that Kate is pretty much talking to her mother and Jack of course is pretty much trying to figure out why she's got problems with him. And, yeah, I read and all that. Like, yeah, okay, we'll have dinner, but I'll pick the topics and everything. Pretty much trying to figure out what his goals are for his mother. Not his mother, her mother. And of course Eleanor's like, yeah, aren't you freaked out that you're are you okay? Your apartment was on fire. It's like, yeah, we're good. She also gets a call by the police, and they're like, you seem like pretty chill because your apartment fucking burned. It's like, yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow. How's that sound? It's like, yeah, cool. All right. And it's really kind of funny because she doesn't know how to handle the police, and the police are like, man, this chick sounds weird. So we do get to the dinner scene, and we see her pretty much trying to figure out kind of what his goal is and what he's trying to do. And they aren't shouting at each other or trading complete insults. It's kind of that, how to explain it? It's kind of that surface level that you can tell you're being polite, but you've got that edge where you're trying to find that chink of where you can get in. And that actually works pretty well because they eventually get into like a fencing match, which was actually pretty cool. And like, oh yeah, you do it? Let's do it. And we see them going through, and they actually get up in fencing gear and everything. And the thing is, we see that he keeps letting Kate win, and Kate knows it because she's good at this shit, and she knows when somebody's not doing their best. Where he's like, no, you're good. And then she makes to like go for him, but he like parries without even looking. Her mom's pissed off about that, but she's like, no, the thing is, I was not trying to hit him. What I was trying to show is that he's lying about how good he is, and what he could be lying about other things. And then of course we see that he eats like this butterscotch that we had seen when she had gotten into the apartment in the first episode. For Armand is like, okay, so that means you were there. So she's trying to figure out that kind of stuff, and her mom's mad at her because of trying to pretty much get him in the face, even though that wasn't her objective, because she knew he was going to parry it. She's like, okay, he's definitely going to be a pretty effective kind of opponent that they're going to have to deal with. Well, we see that Clint's able to get into contact with the Tracksuit Mafia, and it's really kind of funny because they're like taking him, and they got a bag over his head, and he's like, I can see through the bag, and it's just like, yeah. And Kate is then trying to get in contact with him, leaving messages, and uses the security to pretty much pinpoint his GPS location. So he's there, he's trying to, I think he's trying to figure out how much they know about Kate and what they're trying to do with her. And the Tracksuit Mafia, they're like, no, we've got you here. And it's like, oh. And it's kind of crazy. You're like, these guys are a street gang? Not granted, it's just like, their operations just seem like terrible, and Clint's just sitting there. Yep. But they know that she's Kate Bishop, and it's like, oh, damn it. However, she thinks that he's in trouble, and she then smashes through it, and he's like, because like, we've got you. It's like, yeah, I don't know about that. And then she smashes through it. She's like, I thought you were in trouble. It's like, oh, god damn it, kid. And the thing is, she was trying to help. So it wasn't through a completely bad place, but the thing is, she didn't know about his catch and release stick and what was going on. So then they're like duct taped to like these things, and they're like, yeah, go tell the boss. And we find out that is Maya Lopez, who is known as Echo in the comics, and it's really kind of, I'm not that versed with her character. I know that she's a hero, but it's really kind of strange that she's the boss of the Tracksuit Mafia and what that's going to kind of like entail. And that's where the episode ends. So I'm like, ooh, we got a lot of kind of cool character stuff. The dog is safe in the apartment, having eaten its pizza at the moment. Kate and Clint are in a pretty kind of sticky situation, so we'll have to see what the Tracksuit Mafia wants with them, how they'll kind of like handle this, and where it'll kind of go from there. Swordsman is going to be an interesting one for the mix because I'm not that versed with him, but if they handle him well, he's going to be a pretty kind of cool villain for these two to tackle, and for Hawkeye to get back and have a good Christmas with his family, because that's kind of what's going on. We have weird underworld things going on because they're going after Avengers tech from the compound. Jack is doing something to pretty much get into a financially secure kind of position and do his own kind of things. And Hawkeye just kind of wants to get home and have a normal Christmas, and yet he has to deal with all this bullshit. And Kate is taking her steps into the wider MCU world and building herself into the next kind of Hawkeye. So I'm really excited to kind of see these journeys and these characters interact, because if Kate was not handled well, she could very well be annoying. But here, it's handled. They picked the right actress, and they're able to do content that's not annoying and very well delivered and directed well. I'm really happy with how all these characters are. You get some funny ones, you get some menacing ones, and we'll have to see how this kind of works out. So I'm happy with this. I hope that this quality continues, because I have had ones that started before and then quality just goes all over the place. So we'll have to see. So those are my opinions on the 2 episodes. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.